Thanks for downloading this edition of The Why Factor from the BBC, a programme that seeks to find out why we do the things we do. I hope you enjoy it.
This one here, one of his nude women on a blue cushion with a red background.
The Italian artist Modigliani died in 1920, penniless.
Modigliani nude cushion, I think it made 140 million a while ago.
David Henty has copied dozens of Modigliani's.
And my one is 4,300. Again, exactly the same size, the same paints, with saucer frame to be nearly the same. I've probably got more Modigliani's than he has.
I'm Mike Williams, and in this edition of The Why Factor, we'll ask why people copy the art of others and why some will pay good money for it. David Henty has an exhibition underway in Brighton on the south coast of England. Come in through the door and you're met with what looks like a series of works by Lowry, grim northern landscapes, a large Picasso, a canvas by Francis Bacon, and much more.
That painting there is a Jean-Michel Basquiat, the American graffiti artist. One of his went through the other day and made 57 million. Another tragic story, he lived in a cardboard box. He had money, but he died with nothing. He was 27, I think. I did do two of those, but I sold one just before the exhibition. My price is 2,900.
I've always been interested in Indian sculpture and artefacts because I was born and raised in India.
Now, Patricia Burns lives in Sherwood Park in the Canadian province of Alberta.
I'd actually spent quite a bit of time on eBay looking at Indian sculptures and art, and that after a period of time I found this piece that I liked. It was a sculpture of a beautiful Indian lady with a parrot, and I bought it. It was listed as a genuine ancient sculpture, but for the price and whatever, I did not believe that it was. I did not think for one moment that I was buying a real, genuine 900-year-old sculpture, because that would go against all my principles. Something like that belongs in a museum, and it also belongs in the country to form part of that country's culture and heritage, and it's a little piece of history.
One reason to reject a fake is because sometimes there's been a crime. David Henty used to be a forger. He was jailed for making fake British passports. He might have made more than $1 million if only he'd spelled Britannic Majesty properly. And later, he was exposed for faking works of art and passing them off as originals. I've noticed looking around the gallery that you have the little red stickers on quite a few of the paintings. They have sold.
Yeah, we sold 10 before we opened the doors, and there would have been more paintings down here, but there was 40. There's only 30 now showing because the buyers wanted them straight away.
Who are your customers?
I got a commission from America this morning for a Modigliani. I've had emails from Australia. Someone emailed me from Texas, and they wanted me to hold a show over there. And also, the Delaware Museum asked me to donate a couple of pieces. So it takes all sorts, you know.
Are you making a decent living doing this?
Yeah. I'm getting by.
So my name is Philip Mould. I have a gallery dealing in old art over 500 years, based in Pall Mall in London. Let's have a look at this guy on the wall here. If I take out my torch and shine it into the background, you can begin to see aspects that show that this is the work of a master. Peter Lely was the court painter. This is all from his brush. It's his hand, and I'm shining the torch here upon the cheeks. Do you see those striated brush strokes? There's a vigour about them.
The gallery descends 3 stories underground, and it's home to many millions of dollars worth of art. There's a painting behind us of King Henry VIII as a young man. If I could reproduce that perfectly, why would my version be worth less than that version if it's an identical copy?
One's response to an old object is not just aesthetic. They're actually giving you something of themselves. And I think it goes back to in the ancient times of holy relics. The idea of knowing that you have something physical associated with the person that you admire.
But also something that somebody has touched. I mean, Van Dyck touched this canvas. He touched it. It's almost religious.
I think the more you think of art in terms of filling a religious void, I think the better. And the more the concept of fakery, I think, becomes unsettling.
25 years ago, I was in a group and we forged some passports. And we got caught. I did 5 years, and that's where I discovered I could paint in the prison. So good came out of it, and I've been painting ever since. I can paint like Modigliani. I know the way he elongates the face, the neck, makes the eyes almond-shaped. I know that when he paints, he used to mix the colours on the actual canvas. Because I tend to paint in series. So if I'm painting Lowry's, I'll paint 15 or 20 Lowry's. If I'm painting Modigliani, I'll do 15, 20 Modigliani's. Because that way I feel more affiliated with the artist.
Art has to be taken very often on trust. The association with the individual who made it, the connection with the sometimes part deity in the form of a man like Van Gogh is so important. And when you know that you've been duped, when that label proves to be untrue, when your whole belief system has cracked into being in response to something on the basis of what you've been told, only then to have that dashed, I think is a very offensive, a very sad thing.
I thought everything was said and done. And several years went by, and there was a knock at my door, and a gentleman standing there and had some official papers in his hand and told me I had been served. And what it was the Attorney General of Canada versus myself, demanding that the sculpture be returned, etc., etc., etc. And then the experts in Canada said that it was a genuine artifact from Kajirayo from about 900 years ago.
Despite all this, Patricia still believes the piece is a fake, and it was a fake that she wanted. Why?
Does it really matter if something is a beautiful object and you enjoy it and you get peace of mind from looking at it? Surely that in itself is enough, and it doesn't really matter if it's the genuine 900-year-old piece or one that was banged out 2 weeks ago. I think that's what art is about.
The subject has always been fascinating to people. I think whether or not it's because they're intrigued with the concept of individuals pulling the wool over the experts, or is it the personality of these kind of rogue individuals, these forgers themselves, who tend to become escalated by the popular media to kind of these cult figures or these cultural folk heroes?
Colette Loll is the founder and director of the Washington-based Art Fraud Insights, a company which aims to educate people and which investigates suspect artwork.
What some of these rogues have to offer are wonderful, colorful stories. And I think that when you attach that to a work of art in your home, it becomes even more of a conversation piece. There's certainly a difference between being an artist and being a copyist. I think it takes two very different skill sets. But what happens with these forgers is the media picks up on it and they get a little bit of infamy. And with fame comes value. And so suddenly these fakes by these well-known forgers have their own value, which is so ironic, right? I had an exhibition, I had a Matisse that was actually created by renowned Hungarian forger Elmir Dahori. And that piece was actually sold right out of the exhibition for tens of thousands of dollars because it was a Dahori Matisse. It's happened with other great forgers. And so the irony is that these forgeries become valuable in their own right. And even more ironic is that as they become valuable, you end up having these copycats that hit the market, which are actually the most ironic of all is the fake forgery.
One of the most famous fakers when I was growing up was a guy called Tom Keating. And I saw in an auction a self-portrait by Tom Keating. Now, I knew he wasn't a great artist, so I wasn't measuring it necessarily by technical proficiency. But I just loved the idea of having a self-portrait of the faker. So I parted with 200 quid. I was just getting going. And then I began to look into it after the sale and found that the canvas was made after he died and that the self-portrait was based on a photograph in the front of a book about the painter. But there was something for me quite satisfying about that, because I had been faked by a fake of the faker. And ever since that day, I've rather thanked myself, because it was one of those lessons that every art dealer needs to learn. And it was my faith system, my desire for something to be what it was, without actually applying the normal criteria to it, that made me just swan into it.
Everybody knows that the biggest challenge or the problem for the market is fake.
Paul Dong. For 7 years, he worked in Beijing for the Chinese branch of the art auctioneer Christie's. 3 years ago, he set up his own art auction house there.
Maybe as much as 90% of artworks being offered in the art market, from auction to galleries to antique shops, more than 90% are not authentic.
90%?
Yeah, that's reality, especially after the Cultural Revolution, which a lot of the Chinese cultural relics, ancient paintings, antiquities, were destroyed or disappeared without being recorded of their whereabouts. And then people getting rich with a lot of cash and started collecting art. And then people started to play this game of taking chances, of betting on something might be, authentic. There is a chance that you will finally win by gambling. The opportunity of winning from the small number of authentic art pieces would be huge. Maybe as many as 30 to 50% of the buyers in auction rooms in China are actually dealers. Some of them can tell that at least some of the works they buy are questionable, but they know how to sell them, resell them very quickly.
Who's making these fakes?
Chinese paintings were all painted with ink brush, with ink on rice paper. So from one generation to another, it was moral for Chinese artists to carry on their tradition by copying old works, because they knew that old works cannot survive for many years. China has a great number of state-owned and privately owned art academies, training large number of new young students, and they train them art skills that are no longer very common or popular in the West. So upon graduation, because they were not educated to be original, but they need to find a job, and most of them cannot land a job. So what they can do is to try to, copy masterpieces and then sell them for very low prices to entertain the consumer's market.
An awful lot of 20th century art is faked. You don't have to create the illusion of age with 20th century things. And also, a lot of art isn't technically as complicated as the sort of things that were being produced in the 19th, 17th and 16th centuries and earlier. And it's not beyond the wit of man to produce a Matisse drawing or a Russian expressionist picture. It's easier to form the art.
The art market is changing, and many of the sales are now online. That brings even greater opportunities for fraud, but also perhaps opportunities to catch the forgers and the fakers.
What we've done is we've actually looked at tens of thousands of listings, and the ones that are clearly inauthentic and clearly deceptive in nature, we've actually managed to do some modeling. So we look at keywords and we looked at imaging, and we've actually been able to determine whether or not a listing has a high probability to be fraudulent based upon what's contained in the listing itself. The ultimate outcome will be an algorithm that we actually use as a filter for online listings, and it'll help us kind of pull out those items that have a high probability for fraud.
Like what? What kind of elements of the listing are you looking at?
Well, I can't tell you everything because we'll give away our secrets, right?
Yeah.
It is an arms race. It does distort the art historical record. It can be devastating or it can be immoral to substitute a work for an original. And I think that people aren't recognizing that 1 or 2 generations from now, there's going to be a real issue when it comes to sorting out the art historical record.
What do they tell you, your customers? I mean, why do they want a fake?
Well, I suppose it's a David Henty fake. This is the David Henty Modigliani. Not many people can afford 140 million. And this is the nearest thing to it. I
notice you've signed this, but you've signed it Modigliani, not David Henty.
Yeah, I signed it on the back. And all my paintings they've got a chip on the back as well, and a certificate. So you can't forge me, just so people don't get mistaken.
However one dresses it up, it is a form of duplicity, and very often it's a criminal act. And we have a tendency to pedestal the faker, clever him or her, they've got away with it. But these are people who are undermining society. It's true that as a result of scares and fakery, many decent works of art, many honest paintings that were unquestionably by the hand of that particular artist have either been shelved or sometimes marginalised.
Does it go beyond the simply commercial, do you think, this fakery?
I think for a lot of fakers, it's not purely commercial. I think there is an embittered aspect to their motivation. I think they want to prove that even though they haven't made it as an artist themselves, they too can get a slice of the big money that's being thrown around. One can sympathise from that point of view, but sooner or later, fakers almost want to be found out. If they have spent half a lifetime being able to convince people of the quality of an object and yet have had to remain anonymous, there's sometimes an overarching desire to hatch, to come out and to say, hey, all the time it was me.
Is what you do art or just imitation? I
believe it's art. If I'm painting Modigliani, I paint it the way he painted it, which is fast, and I'll just lay the paint on and you have to be brave about it. So, art, I think I'm an artist.
Why don't you make your own art?
No, I haven't got a lot to say as an artist. I'm more interested in how they make it and how they got to that finished article. And there's so many paintings I really like. I can't wait to get up in the morning and paint them.
Thanks for listening to The Why Factor. If you'd like to hear more episodes, there's a wide range of programmes on our website. Among them, the mysterious ways we perceive time, conspiracy theories, and the rise